We sometimes talk about the year 2000 as if it happened 10 years ago. Breaking news, people. That happened 20 years ago. You know that game? Not Ocarina of Time, the one that came after Majora's Mask, a very controversial game for fans of the Nintendo 64. That game is 20 years old. So we thought that instead of talking about an individual game as we kick off 2020, we sort of look back at the year 2000, chronologically speaking, and highlighting some of the top games, some of the games that definitely meant something to us, because I guarantee you that as we do this podcast episode, some of you are going to go like, damn, really? That game is 20 years old? Because even working on this list, I feel pretty damn old. So let's talk about that and another exciting episode of A Cast of the Past with a brand new episode every Sunday with yours truly. I'm back. I'm in my new home. Earthquakes aside, things are good here at Puerto Rico with Juan Velas joining me. Earthquake free from London, Ontario. We got Keith Posha. Keith, when you hear 2000,
I'm not Keith Posha.
20 year. Oh, Keith Hamilton.
That's
He's
right.
Like it's the earthquakes, man.
I paid money for that change, okay? You're going to address me properly.
I'm sorry. Keith
Hello.
Hamilton. Wait for the pause. Hamilton.
Okay. That's better. You can continue
20
your
years ago. How does that make you feel?
I was kind of bracing myself for this episode, and then the second you said that Majora's Mask was 20 years old, that wincing feeling you talk about just struck through me like, oh man, really? We're getting old, guys, and it sucks.
Yeah,
I don't want to get old.
I'm going to give Ryan possibly... I follow a lot of these retro gaming communities, and the topic of retro gaming is naturally very difficult, but when you think about the N64, a game like Majora's Mask 20 years ago from Boston, Mass. Ryan, is that considered a retro game now? That's 20 years old, 2 decades?
Absolutely. I think anything...
It is, but it doesn't feel good that it's considered retro.
Yeah, if you're talking 20 years old, that is retro. And I think people were even calling N64 PS1 retro even, well before that. But certainly it is very firmly in the retro category now.
Yeah, so this is going to be a reaction thing in that I have a couple of things like from January all the way down to December. But if you enjoy the podcast, people, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And kicking it off, January 24th, so starting the year 2000, we got a sequel to a party game on the N64 with Mario Party 2. Some people consider this and the third one to be some of the best in the series. What are some of your memories with this game?
I was really into the N64 Mario parties back in the day, with Mario Party 2 being my favorite of the bunch. I played a lot of 2, played a lot of 3, and I enjoyed them back in the day. Going back, I hate Mario Party now. It's
really?
garbage.
Why?
It's hard to put into words.
He's not good.
It's hard to put into words, yes. It's not good, but you just feel bad playing Mario Party. I will admit that part of this stems from being a Giant Bomb viewer and watching all of the Mario Party parties, but that helped show that those games are trash. There's no skill. It's basically a giant 50-turn RNG fiesta that just feels bad to watch and feels worse to play.
Well, I'm going to disagree and say that I'm a big fan of Mario Party. I don't think it's completely RNG. Clearly, the mini games, a lot of skill will come into play, and there's certainly strategy you can implement in as far as what kind of paths you take and weighing your dice rolls.
Let me lay out the scenario for you. Something that happened to me personally playing Mario Party 2 about a year ago. You're on about turn 45 of 50. You're in first place, and then the second place behind you has 1 star less than you. They roll the dice, they get a 6. They hit a hidden block, and boom, they get a star. And all of a sudden, now they're in first place. How do you not want to just throw your N64 against the wall at that point?
Well, that's
hate
a
Mario
test of
Party.
friendship, Keith.
Look,
that's
I've had bad beats before. I'll never forget when my friend during chance time gave 3 of my stars to Wario, man. That never leaves
it's a
you.
Dick friend.
That being said, it's still a really fun game, and Mario Party 2 being my personal favorite, although I have to say the one on the Switch, pretty damn good. I actually really like it a lot. But Mario Party 2, there's a lot of memories there. Nobody really likes Mario Party 1 because there's too many mini games where you have to rotate the joystick and burn a hole right through your hand.
Yeah.
So Mario Party 2, they're like, all right, forget those mini games. That's out of there. We're also going to add in these cool themes where you're wearing a cowboy hat or there's like a pirate themes thing. So they had a really a good amount of fun boards. And this was a game that during like when Let's Plays were like a huge thing on YouTube, I saw people playing that game, and then my friends and I, we all went and played that game on the Wii Virtual Console, and we just had so much fun playing it. So I played it way more about 8 years ago than I ever did even when it came out. Like, I rented it once, enjoyed it, but it wasn't until, like I said, 8 or so years ago that I really, like, we did everything. Like, we played through every mode in that game, and there's a game called Day at the Races where it's literally, this is a complete RNG fest where all you do is you bet on one of the people, and it's just a horse race essentially. And we were trying to unlock that mode in single player so we could just basically bet on that mode. Just for like dollars or whatever. Unfortunately, though, if you play it in that mode, they don't actually tell you who the winner is. So, long story short, we weren't able to do that. Nevertheless,
child gambling. What a shame.
Yeah.
As far as the old Mario parties, 2 is by far my favorite. 2.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that. And for everybody watching and listening, please react to any of the games that we're going to be talking about. It's impossible to get to all of them, right? Like, I just picked out some of the best ones, but, we are on social media, a Cast of the Past on Twitter, castofthepast.com/Discord if you want to continue the conversation. Now, we're going from January, we're going to be following over to February 29th. We're going to keep playing some games on the N64, people, but if you like these Pokemon Red and Blues and you wanted to see some of these Pokemons in 3D on the screen and do some battle, then we got Pokemon Stadium for you. And you could import some of the Pokemons and all that. I know that this is like, you're only getting a fragment of the Pokemon games with this one, right? So what did you guys think about Pokemon Stadium, where it was primarily just the fighting part of the Pokemon games?
Well, before I get into my thoughts, I have a question for you both. Is Pokemon Stadium a better Mario Party game than Mario Party with the mini games in there? Because I would argue that Clefairy Says is better than any of the Mario Party mini games.
You could say that, I guess, but not really.
I feel like the mini games just get kind of old if you don't have it mixed in with an actual
you gotta have more
Mario Party game.
I disagree strongly.
Keith,
but
you just hate Mario Party.
You just hate Mario Party too.
It's probably a little bit of a tinted opinion.
You got your little anecdotes of where you got mad at Mario Party, and you have a personal vendetta against the game.
So Ryan, what'd you think about Stadium?
Stadium, I remember being very hyped as a kid to be like, oh, it's a 3D Pokemon. This is going to be so amazing. And then you play it, and it's just kind of like, this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And if you especially do not import Pokemon, then it's just a complete waste of time. It's only really fun if you're able to import your red and blue Pokemon. And even then, I was not particularly impressed with it at all.
Yeah, I agree 100% because in theory, it sounded like an awesome idea. And then eventually they got there with the later games, but it's one of those examples of series where it's cool in concept, but just doesn't land in execution. Very similar to the first Assassin's Creed in a weird way was Pokemon Stadium. And the other games are great, just Stadium didn't land, but great minigames.
Yeah, for me, I never transferred any of the main games from Pokemon from my Game Boy, so I just kind of rented this, and I had the generic set, which really wasn't fun, so can't talk too much more about that. But here we go. March 2nd, we're going to switch things over to the PlayStation 1. And if you're a fan of professional wrestling games, this is probably one of the best ones. Like, this is when the transition happened, right? Like, if you played wrestling games on the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, they were kind of just like fighting games. But the first SmackDown game for the WWF, I thought was incredible. And, okay, people.
That's a 2000 game?
No, Keith. I'm going to blow your mind right now. Do you know that SmackDown 1 and 2 came out the same year? Here we go. So, okay.
I do remember that, I think.
Yeah. So March 2nd, the first SmackDown game came out for the PS1. And then November 21st, SmackDown 2 Know Your Role also came out. So it's like way before THQ.
I wonder if the original SmackDown like got delayed or something, and then
maybe
they still were going to release SmackDown 2. But I do have a lot of memories of this game. I played SmackDown 2 more, but I did rent this game, I think, before I got SmackDown 2, and I also borrowed it again from a friend. But SmackDown 2 was very pivotal in me learning a lot about wrestling. This was right when I got into wrestling when this game came out. And there was that setting where they would put the name of the move at the bottom of the screen whenever someone did a move.
Yeah,
and
so you'd see punch 75 times.
Yeah. That is how I learned the names of wrestling moves because I was still very new. Yeah.
Chop.
Fun fact there.
That game had an awesome story mode that would seemingly never end. You know, the first SmackDown, talking about that one first, it's like, it's still fun to play. It's like a super sped up version of the SmackDown games, but I played it like late last year, and I played the second one, and I'm like, man, like these look rough, but the presentations there, like the entrance music, it wasn't like the N64 games.
I hated the entrances in those games, though.
Oh yeah, like you didn't see them in the ring.
I'm just walking, and there's a video behind me, but you can't see anything.
But it was cool that you got to see the videos.
Yeah, but the moves look pretty good. Like the Hell in a Cell were not Hell in a Cell matches,
well,
and
Hell
you would have to like
dive until SmackDown 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly with that one, but like you would have to like dive out. But I think that it's kind of interesting. You know, both games came out the same year, sort of like what they improved upon. I think they expanded on the roster. The second one had a lot more creation tools, and it laid the foundation for like, I mean, hell, up until like SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I want to say the gameplay was largely this, but just slightly modified. So, Keith, what do you think about the SmackDown games on the PS1?
It is weird to think that SmackDown 1 is a 2000 game, because in my head, SmackDown 2 is a 2000 game, but the fact that they came out the same year, maybe, Ryan, you're onto something, that there is some story behind why they, like, maybe it got delayed or they just had to put something out in March and SmackDown 2 wasn't ready, but I'm a lot more fond of SmackDown 2. It was my first PlayStation wrestling video game, and I must have put hundreds of hours in that as a kid. Between that and No Mercy, that's pretty much my childhood right there. And just the foundation that it laid for all the future SmackDown games, I think it's so important to where the wrestling games got to. And even though it is a little fast, it's a little arcadey, it was fun as a kid, and I really enjoyed my time with SmackDown 2. 1, not so much. I think I actually ended up playing SmackDown 1 after 2, so there wasn't really a lot there for me.
Plus, the fact that they came out the same year, it's like, if you see a 2 after the SmackDown, the default thing is going to be like, why would I play the first one, right?
And what? Honestly, it's true, because everything that SmackDown 2 does, or SmackDown 2 does everything 1 does, but better.
Exactly. Now, this next pick is for you, Keith. So on April 4th, we're going to be talking about some Star Wars games. I think that to this day, people still clamor for this game, a racing game. We have Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. And I think that, was it you, Ryan, or maybe it was you, Keith? Like, some people said, like, the best thing about that Phantom Menace movie was that we got this game.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I know we had it on our list when we created a list for the Nintendo 64, what the heck do they call those
like
things?
the N64 Classic.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. We did a video, and go check it out on the YouTube channel and the podcast feed, where we built a N64 Classic, and I actually was the one who brought up Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. This is one I really want to go back and revisit because I haven't played it in forever. But it was a really cool racing game where you were able to like upgrade your pod racer, and just something a little bit different, and probably one of the best aspects of Episode 1.
Without a doubt there. I mean, given I haven't played it in a very long time, I think that Episode 1 Pod Racer is better than Episode 1. But yeah, just a fun racing game that was different, because back then when I played it, the concept of pod races was beat to death and made fun of horrendously.
This is pod racing.
Chaska Sabalba! And I'm with Ryan. I would like to go back and try that game. I know it's very accessible these days, so maybe we should put that on our calendar.
And there's a PS2 version. I don't know if that one is the same game. I think it's even on like PlayStation Now or something like that. I need to
look this up.
It's like extreme. It's got like a title, so I'm assuming it's some kind of like upscaled version of the original game. Now, while Keith looks this up, Ryan, we got to talk about this one. April 27th, going back to the N64 Majora's Mask. So the fact that it's been 20 years, I forget, you probably answered this, my attention span is of 10 seconds. Did you play Majora's Mask the year it came out?
Yes, I'm pretty sure I did. I only tried it out. I didn't get very far. I will say that. I never owned this game until recently. Even now, I only technically own the like a virtual console version. But this, when I actually played this before I played Ocarina of Time. I got into Ocarina of Time kind of late. And I tried it out, and I remember I was confused as hell what to do. I was stuck as the Deku scrub at the beginning for way too long, not realizing what the heck was going on. Eventually, I got as far as beating the first dungeon and trying to figure out how to get in the second dungeon in the snow area. And I never got any further than that until I got to college. So I always say this about this particular Zelda game. It should be nobody's first Zelda game, but it's a Zelda fan's Zelda game. It's just one of those ones that it's everything you like about Zelda, but it's got this really weird twist to it. So it's something different, but if you really like Zelda games, then you'll really appreciate it.
Okay.
And then there's Keith. There's Keith.
Wait for it.
Who doesn't like it.
First of all, Keith, did you find any info about the racing game on PS2?
Yeah, I think it's a different game where it's
Is it a sequel you never played?
It is a sequel I've never played.
Ooh.
And it is on the PS4.
Yeah, it is on the PS4, so maybe something we could take a look at possibly. I like these spin-off games. Like I was just checking out Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX on the Switch, the demo, and it's nice to see like things branch out. Maybe they don't work all the time like Pokemon Stadium, but for other stuff, it could work well. Now, let's talk about some PC games. We're going to go, it's summertime, people. June 29th to be exact. This is a sequel that I actually listened to an interview of this company called Blizzard. I think we've heard about this company.
They never did anything.
It was fascinating listening to the developers talk about this, like, we're doing a sequel to Diablo. Hopefully it does well. I'm like, oh man, you don't have a damn idea of what you're about to release. Diablo 2, guys, talk to me about it.
I think it's pretty fair to say that Diablo 2 is maybe one of the most important video games ever created, at least PC games. Another game that I've probably put about 1,000 hours to in my lifetime. What's your guys' class in that game? I was like the sorcerer, and then in Lord of Destruction, I was the necromancer.
I think I was a necromancer because, like, for context, I played Diablo 2 way after. Like I still have my physical copies. Like when the WoW Battle Chest was out,
I don't think I owned a computer in
played
2000, to be honest.
Yeah, neither did I. So like I played it, like 8 years after it came out, and guess what? Still freaking awesome. Like that game is absolutely still worth playing, not for nostalgia's sake. I think that even now, people compare Diablo 3 to Diablo 2, and even though 3 definitely got good, it's not nearly as gritty looking as Diablo 2. Like, that game looks dirty. It lives and breathes the world that it brought to us. So Ryan, what was your experience with those games?
I'll be honest, I've played very, very little of Diablo 2, like maybe only about an hour of it. And I know how revered it is.
Wow.
I had many friends who were obsessed with the Diablo games. I did get Diablo 3, but even then I've still never beaten that game. I always try to play it and I just lose interest. It's never quite caught on for me. I'm always willing to give it another shot, but it's never kept me engaged.
I can totally see where you're coming from, though, because even back in the day when I first played it, it was very much a have something going on and play Diablo in the background. Like, it's one of those games that I consider a podcast game, where if I'm sitting here listening to a podcast just to keep my hands busy, I'll play Diablo and not really think about it too much. And that type of game isn't really for everybody, so... And it's kind of almost like the opposite of Zelda, where even though it tries, it's not a very story-driven game, where that's kind of what you're going for, or you just kind of zone out, turn the brain off, and click things until they die, and then grab the shiny things around you. Yeah, because
even then, I've tried like Path of Exile, and I'm just like, I don't know what it is. These types of games, I can't get into them.
Well, Ryan,
I think that the top-down perspective for some people isn't like everybody's cup of tea. I think it's okay because people sometimes go like, oh my God, how dare you call yourself a gamer because you haven't played X or Y. It's like, look, you can appreciate a game for what it was and what it is, but that doesn't mean it has to be your game. Like, here's another example. So this game came out for the Dreamcast the same day as Diablo 2 came out for PC. Marvel versus Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes. So this is a fighting game that I think we gotta take you for a ride, Keith. We'll take you for a ride eventually, but
I couldn't remember because I was gonna say get ready for the next battle, but I couldn't remember if that's Marvel vs. Capcom or not.
That was Tekken. But close enough, man. I tried. Close enough. But this game had the sprites from games like X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom. Like it's like what Mugen is now, this game was legally back in the day, right? And it was just freaking awesome to play in the arcades, but the Dreamcast version, I actually have a story about this. So, like, this is like one of the more expensive Dreamcast games. Even back in the day, one day I'm with my brother, we go to somebody's house, and they're just like selling a bunch of games for like $5, but not really paying attention to what you're choosing. So I knew this is like a $50 game, and I'm like, $5, I'll take it. It's like, no, I already said it. So I got this game for $5 and I suck at it. I'm terrible at it. I suck at the combos, but damn, that soundtrack is good. And damn, that roster is just freaking ridiculous. Like, I don't think it's up until Smash Ultimate now that we've had a roster as crazy in a fighting game. What did you guys think about it?
That game blew my mind as a kid for exactly the roster. I remember seeing it for the first time in an arcade and thinking
Jill Valentine.
Yeah, like, oh my God, that's Chris Redfield fighting Wolverine, and then Ryu just came on the screen and Hadokened everybody, and it's just it's so flashy and fun and colorful. Yeah, Mega Man came here, and for some weird reason, Magneto just beat the hell out of, I don't know,
everybody's here.
Everybody, yeah. And then the Juggernaut came in and did Juggernaut things. It's just such an amazing roster. And then even though it's very fast-paced, there's a surprising amount of depth that can feel a little overwhelming because everybody has different styles and moves. It was a game it's one of those games that I've always wanted to try to get good at, but was never able to do so. And it's awesome that it's another game that's so accessible these days through being re-released, and it's fun to pick up and play every now and then.
Yeah, I've never been a fighting game guy, so this is one, and especially not getting a Dreamcast till way later. I don't know what other consoles it was on, but I just never got into this one. I remember hearing about it. I especially remember when the third one came out, but With fighting games, for me, I can never be like, oh, this is why 2 was better than 3. This is why Street Fighter 2 Turbo is better than Street Fighter 2. I've never gotten into them enough to know the subtleties, but I can also definitely appreciate that this was like the first big fighting game where like, these big intellectual properties are going against each other. So you have so many fantasy matchups that you would have never expected to see. Being able to play those out, I can definitely see the appeal of that.
Yeah, and this game also came out later, I think, for the PS2 and the original Xbox. Now, we go over to September, and we've actually talked about this game, full review available on the YouTube channel and the video archives. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 came out for the PS1 during this date. I still think like it is the best version of the game to play. I still got to go back and play because like I have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X on the original Xbox, and apparently that one is supposed to be like an optimized version of this game, and the N64 version is like kind of okay, but there's also a Dreamcast version, I believe. Now that we've had a chance to play it, a couple of months have gone by. What did you guys think about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2?
It really was the Tony Hawk that, I mean, the first game was very popular, but Tony Hawk 2 was just taking a foundation of a really fun game and taking it to the next level. You got crazy things like Skater Heaven and the Bull Ring, and then you upped the roster. You had create a skater, create a park, just taking everything to the next level, and an amazing soundtrack, of course. It's just a very memorable game. Of course, it's definitely now a little clunky to go back to the PS1 version. But yeah, I'd have to try out that optimized Xbox version. I'd be very curious because things like draw distances and like you have to kind of use the D-pad because the joystick is just never going to work out for you. It's definitely hasn't aged super well, but it's still a very playable game. We all went back and were able to beat the game without too much trouble. So that's, still a thing, but definitely it hasn't aged super, super well.
Still a ton of fun to play. I've gone back and played it even after we finished our episode about the game, and arguably one of the best soundtracks ever.
Oh yeah, I think that especially around this time, you owe so much to Tony Hawk. Like the music that I listened to was definitely inspired by that game, and now this is where we get big. Like we were talking about this before we hit the record button. I could have sworn the PS2 came out in 2001, but on October 26th,
my mind.
Yeah,
my
the
God.
PlayStation 2 people came out on October 2000, October 26th. And if you think about that, there are still a ton of PS1 and N64 games that came after this. Like just as a teaser, Final Fantasy IX came out after the release of the PlayStation 2. That one came out on November 13th, but some of the games that came out with the PS2 simultaneously were Tekken Tag Tournament. Like, I was hooked on Tekken Tag Tournament on the arcades, and when I saw the PS2 version, I was like, holy crap. The graphics were incredible. You definitely felt that 3D leap, right? Where it's like, now it's not only beautiful to look at, but some of the games, and all of the games, like you saw like really crisp, clean, 60 frame per second graphics. What did you guys think about the lead up to the PlayStation 2, considering it was also a DVD player, which seems like a weird thing to talk about now, but you really owe like the DVD player capabilities of it to like its success. So what did you guys think about the PS2?
Sony has always been so good about that, really, to sidetrack a little bit. Like, with the PS1, it was a CD player, and you're like, well, that's cool, I can play my music on that. Then with PS2, it was DVDs, and then PS3, it was later Blu-rays. Sony's been great with that, but I'm trying to recall my hype level for the PS2, and I honestly don't think it was that much until I got my hands on a PS2. I think it was in late 2001. I finally was able to play it, and I'm like, wow, this is the future. This changed everything. NHL Hits was the first game I ever played on a PS2.
I remember playing that on the GameCube. That was actually a ton of fun.
That was a great game.
Yeah, I don't remember too much of the hype just because we had magazines and stuff at that time, but I wasn't really going on like gaming news sites a ton. Like maybe you'd go on some like cheat code websites or whatever, things like that. But I wasn't really looking into, oh, this is the announcement. You'd hear about it from other kids and whatever in school. But yeah, I just remember hearing before I'd even seen any PS2 gameplay footage or anything, people just telling me, oh, games are like movies now. So I didn't know what to expect because I didn't know fully what they meant like that. But obviously, just more cinematic, more cutscenes, things like that to get you into the story more. And certainly, PlayStation 2 was taking that to the next level from the PlayStation.
Yeah, and for context, some of the launch titles, not a great launch lineup. Like, we got to be real. So, Armored Core 2, Dynasty Warriors 2, these aren't all of them, just some of them. Evergrace, Fanavision, Kessen, Midnight Club, so that's a really good one. NHL 1, Orphan, Ready to Rumble, Boxing Round 2. That was my first PS2 game. That was the first one that I played.
Let's get ready to rumble. I played a lot of the first one on PS or on the N64.
Yeah, that was my main one, but when I played the PS2 version, I was like, damn. So Silent Scope, that was a port of the arcade game, like with the sniper rifle. Smuggler's Run from Rockstar, SSX. Street Fighter EX3, that was a thing. Summoner, Swing Away, Tekken Tag Tournament, Time Splitters 1, Unreal Tournament, a Wild Racing. So nothing that's like, holy crap, I gotta get this. But
yeah, there's no like... not many story-driven games in that, you know what I mean? They had a lot of kind of, you always usually see some racing and sports games kind of are there because,
graphics.
They come out every year and it's yeah, exactly, the graphics, everything. So
yeah, a lot of tech demos, games that would either like be kind of dead in the water at launch or things that would go on to have better
what
sequels.
Forza is for Xbox is it's like here's how pretty games can look on this system.
Forza, yes, it's like Forza Horizon not at this point. Forza Horizon's a wonderful game.
Yeah, it's actually a freaking awesome game. Yeah, I love Game Pass. So switching over to the Dreamcast for just a second, November 6th, the very first Shenmue. So talking about story-driven games. I rented this game because I saw it a lot of magazines, and it was one of those things that magazines had a tough time explaining what it was, right?
Hey, do you guys know where I can find some sailors?
Man, like, and the funny part about that is that was only like the first part of the game, really. But people still talk about that. It took me so long.
I just go around asking everybody, I'm looking for some sailors. And they're like, I know sailors. They hang out in bars. But I could never find the bar. Like, I found some other bar and they weren't there. Took forever.
I think a lot of people had a similar situation where, like, I walked around. I don't remember a damn thing about my experience because I just don't think it's, maybe I would like it now, possibly. There's
Do you
like
remember anything
package.
About the incident? The incident, the day that it snowed?
Oh, man, no.
What was it? Was it Tom? Was it?
Oh,
Tom.
The
Jamaican guy.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, pour one out for Tom. That's the only good thing about Shenmue.
That guy, we laughed so much at Tom. But yeah, Shenmue was... Say what you will, it's hilarious to play now and totally worth playing for the memes alone. It is a damn impressive game for its time. The amount of voice acting that they were able to put in, the amount of tasks you can do, how much you manage in that game, it is extremely impressive with how much is going on. It's probably one of the first games to really accomplish that feeling of like a living, breathing world, and it's very technically impressive.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So for a quick context, like Shenmue, it's an adventure game in every sense of the word, with a little bit of fighting, etc. But you walk around, it's a lot of dialogue. So if you don't care about dialogue, like, that is the game. That is in essence the character, the world, the story. Whereas like Diablo 2 is a top-down, hack and slash type of game, dungeon crawler. Yeah, like this is the complete opposite of that. So you require a ton of patience, and it's a super lengthy game. Now, we talked about this game earlier, Final Fantasy IX, November 13th. I believe this was the last PS1 game that I bought before I made the switch to the PS2. So I've bought a lot more PS1 games since then, but like in that generation, that was mine. And dare I say it, I think this is the most underrated Final Fantasy game of all time. I think that because it came out after the PS2, a lot of people just went like, why would I buy that? Because like there's the new one. People already knew about Final Fantasy X. You look at the contrast, and it's like this game is sort of a throwback to the original Final Fantasy games. But I love the charm, the characters, the story, the music. My goodness, people, I freaking love Nobuo Uematsu. Did you guys have any experiences with 9?
I've never touched Final Fantasy IX because at the point that I got interested in Final Fantasy, I think 10 had already come out. I came to Final Fantasy very late, and like I checked out 7, I played part of 8, but it was really hard to go back to, and I just completely skipped 9. I should probably fix that one day.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm not the Final Fantasy guy either, so never played it.
Now, check this out. November, people. November was packed because it's like we got Shenmue on the 6th.
I mean, holiday season. Guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But for our significance, though, holy crap! Because here we go. So Final Fantasy, that's for me. A couple days later, this game, November 17th, WWF No Mercy for the N64. A couple of days after that, we got SmackDown 2.
Wow.
And then in between
that is maybe the most important week in wrestling video game history.
And then between that, this is like the Ryan category. November 20th, Banjoe-Tooie for the N64.
Ooh.
That's all just like right there. Oh, and also for Ryan, December 4th, Pokemon Puzzle League on the N64.
Puzzle League.
That's crazy that all of those games came out after the PS1 came out.
PS2, yeah.
Yeah, the PS2, sorry. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, PlayStation was definitely, well, I know a lot of these were also, we're talking some N64 games, but PlayStation has always been well known for supporting a old system for quite a while after the new system comes out. But yeah, ton to unpack there. WWF No Mercy, what can be said that hasn't already been said about that game? Incredible branching story modes to play. The gameplay it's a ton of fun, even though I'm not like, I kind of like how some of the newer games work, but don't get me wrong, I do like me some No Mercy, and I loved all the backstage areas you could explore too, and the creative mode for its time was super fun to use, and you could really make a ton of different characters on there, and you could edit most importantly, and I know they had this in sort of the ones made previously for WCW, but the fact that you could edit current roster members. So, oh hey, if this guy
could take the mask off of Kane. My God, what a concept.
Yeah, so if some guy changed his look, which happens very frequently in wrestling or whatever, you could edit him to have his gear look more closer to the modern version of him or whatever. That was just a huge part of that game. So much fun.
Yeah, in my case, I've gone back and played No Mercy as far back as like 2 months ago because I got this like N64 USB controller, and it's still great. Like, is it my favorite wrestling game of all time? No, I think that some of the PS2 and PS3 games take that spot for me. But yeah, the fact that we had No Mercy, and then a couple of days later you had SmackDown. No Mercy was a lot more methodical, slow paced, but then SmackDown was like boom, like in your face. Power driver, you're up in 2 seconds. So I actually love the fact that if you have both consoles, it's like maybe based on your friends, you got to choose one game over the other, and that was freaking huge. But I want to ask you guys about Banjo-Tooie because I never played that. I played Banjo-Kazooie, the first one, but because I never beat it, I just never bothered to play the sequel. Ryan, I know you're a big fan of this one, right?
So Banjo-Tooie is a game that I rented it once and didn't get very far in. I had a lot more fun back when it came out with Banjo-Kazooie. However, a couple of years ago, my friend and we went and played Banjo-Tooie to completion. Yeah, my friend Chris, he's a way bigger banjo fan than I am, and I'm a pretty big fan of it. But he had always played, he'd complete 100% Banjo-Kazooie. But then when he got to Banjo-Tooie, he would basically do the minimum amount of like jiggies, the puzzle pieces you would need to complete the game. And then we're both like, you know what? We're going to work together and we're going to 100% the game. And we did. And the thing about Banjo-Tooie is it's kind of akin to Donkey Kong 64 in that like it's a little bit overwhelming. It's very impressive what they tried to do. They tried to build this interconnected world through all the stages, so you could be in a stage in the game and take a path that actually leads you to an area you couldn't reach in another stage. So there's a lot of setup of, oh, I can't get all the jiggies here because I have to get to a future level to do some sort of setup and then go back to that level to get it. And there's this train that literally you have to move through various stages to get it all the way to the end. So
sounds less cool.
Yeah, they tried to do a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to do a lot in that game, and it's got ambition to a T, but I think a lot of people just appreciated the simplicity of the original Banjo-Kazooie, but Banjo-Tooie is still a great game. It's just, I prefer the original one.
Yeah, the N64 platformer is just such a fascinating thing to me because it's a genre I totally missed. Like, I didn't come to Mario 64 till years later on the Nintendo DS and never touched Donkey Kong 64, never touched any of the Banjo games, haven't played a Conker game. It's just like a total, like, missing spot in my video game history.
We'll have to get to those.
Yeah, like Banjo-Kazooie I rented a couple of times, but Conker... that's one that I've always wanted to check out, just because it's so obnoxious. That
game does not mess around. That game, it is hard as hell.
And the fact that it's on N64. Oh yeah, the big mighty Pooh, is it?
The Great Mighty Pooh, I think.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't play it, so
yeah.
It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing of poop, people, is what matters. But I mentioned Pokemon Puzzle League, so. You know, we had Pokemon Stadium at the beginning of the year. We have another one here. I think this is kind of like Tetris Attack. I never really played it. I put it here literally because you mentioned it one time.
Again, my friend Chris owned this, and we played it like 10 years ago. The only part I remember is depending on if you do something in the game, like you hear sound effects from different characters from the TV show. And whenever I think of that game, the only thing I think of is there's a line with James from Team Rocket, and he just goes, "I'm feeling giddy." And that's all I remember from that game.
Interesting.
I mean, if there's something to remember, why not James?
Yes.
Yeah. And sort of to cap off, because like I had a lot more games on those lists, but there was no way once again we could get to it. But just to like quickly recap, so March 21st, we got Wario Land 3 for the Game Boy Color. So, like, excellent games that were just a little bit different than the Mario ones. Perfect Dark on May 22nd. So, people always talk about GoldenEye. This is one game I never played. First time I touched it was, like, November last year on the Rare Replay. Like, I always heard about it.
It's basically GoldenEye 2 with different set of characters.
Did you like it?
I only played the multiplayer mode, but there's a lot of people that swear by this game over GoldenEye.
Mm-hmm.
But the multiplayer was
really
just
good in it,
like playing GoldenEye.
Interesting. Okay, so a couple more. August 24th, Age of Empires 2: The Conqueror's expansion. So Age of Empires 2, I mean, we dedicated hundreds of hours. One of my top 5 favorite games of all time. October 23rd, Time Splitters 2. Here's a game I had to bring up. October 24th, Mega Man Legends 2. I played a ton of the first game. It was also on the N64. Did you guys ever play the Mega Man Legends games?
No, sir.
Nope.
So this is something that I would love for us to play at least a couple of hours. It's super accessible. You can buy it on the PS3 store, by the way, Ryan, for like $6. But it's an adventure game, fully voice dialogued, like full voice dialogue with pretty much all the characters, towns, upgrades.
Is the voice, or are the voices as bad as some of the ones in like the PS1 Mega Man games? Because good God, they're
like not
brutal.
Bad. It's honestly not bad. Like I played this one like
I need to
summer
see
of
this
last
for
year.
myself.
Yeah, you can check it out. It's like a third-person shooter, like corridor-based. It's got a lot of stuff. Like the control scheme kind of sucks, but it's honestly worth checking out. Crash Bash on November 6th. So it's like if you like Mario Party or if you hate it, Crash Bandicoot.
Wow.
He's got a spin-off for you.
I totally forgot that Crash Bash existed.
Oh my God. Wait. Did you guys ever experience, like, there were hotel rooms where you could rent time to play Crash Bash?
I do remember hotel rooms that had these janky, like, N64 controllers that you could rent games on, but that was never happening at my family vacation.
Yeah, I've never heard of hotel rooms to rent to play Crash Bash, but you could rent them for other reasons that we won't talk about.
They probably
on this
charged
podcast.
you like $10 a minute.
I
$10
remember
per party game.
Yeah, I've encountered those before because, side story, one time I went down to the States to I can't remember. I was to go shopping or something, and it was the same weekend that the Metal Gear Solid 4 multiplayer demo was out, or it was a beta or something, and I remember being all excited, like, yeah, I'm taking my PS3 with me and I'm going to play this demo, and then the only thing that I could hook up, or I couldn't hook my PS3 up to the hotel room TV, and the only thing they had there was an N64 and a PS1, so maybe I stumbled into a Crash Bash room, I don't know.
A Crash Bash room, man.
And I didn't even get to play the multiplayer beta.
Yeah, during that fateful year, there were many hotel rooms scattered with Crash Bash.
Yeah, a lot of crashing and bashing happened in those.
Yeah, if you ever played with those controllers, I just hope you had some hand sanitizer. And that was not a common thing.
I heard that's what
day.
people go to Vegas for, to just go on one long Crash Bash.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, but not what you think.
Oh, man. But it's been fun. I enjoyed this conversation. And everybody that's watching and listening, like, let us know if you would like us to take a look at maybe some movies and react in a similar way, or tackle another year or genre. You know, we dedicate the podcast to talking about a specific game or movie, but it's impossible, right, for us to cover every single one that we want to get to. And I think episodes like this definitely help us engage or sort of like measure our interest, our personal interest for some of these games. Out of all these games, to conclude, guys, as Keith so beautifully stretches, I'm going to kick it off with you, man.
Just
I'm going to kick it off with you. Oh, yeah. Keith, out of the games that we've mentioned, if you had to pick one game and be like, this is the one game you have to play from the year 2000 that we talked about, which would it be?
That's a hard question.
I know.
Not for me.
If I had...
Right.
Oh, yeah, okay, let him have it.
Go play Majora's Mask, okay? If you enjoy Zelda games, go play Majora's Mask. It's one of my personal favorite Zelda games, so check it out if you enjoy the genre. But if you've never played a Zelda game, don't start there.
And if you enjoy playing fun video games, I would recommend you go check out Diablo 2. I'm torn between Diablo 2 and No Mercy. But I don't think No Mercy's for everybody, and I would say Diablo 2 is the better game for that reason. So I guess Diablo 2, but No Mercy's a very close
I think it's
second.
harder for people who've never got into wrestling games to say, "Oh, here, go play No Mercy," and understand why it was so great for its time, you know? I think most people that still enjoy No Mercy today, it's because of the nostalgia factor of it, because mechanically, while it is still fun, I don't think someone who's used to the modern games may see the same reasons that people liked it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, I would have to say Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Diablo 2 was my initial pick, but just to bring up another one, just because it's like, just the soundtrack alone, being perfectly honest, is worth the price of admission. The fact that the gameplay really holds up, like maybe you played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 or Underground 2 or Proving Ground, and you're like, oh, the first ones, they gotta suck, like mechanically. Like Ryan mentioned, some games don't hold up. Yeah, this game doesn't have some of the features that the later games had, but it's freaking good. And it's not like a good PS1 game. It's not a fun game to go back to. It's a good game. Like regardless, and you should absolutely check that out. And please let us know. Go to Twitter, A Cast of the Past, and let us know, like, what is the definitive game from the year 2000 for you. We've talked about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and other games available now in the archive, as well as a lot of cool movies. So that's going to do it for this episode. And up until next time, this has been another exciting episode of A Cast
to the
Past.
Keith, Majora's Mask, like, we got to sit down later, and like, that game did something to you, didn't it?
Yeah, it didn't play well.
You really hate it.